I hope you all are doing well. This video is going to be a little bit different, and I do apologize. I have some notes with me, so if I'm looking down, that's what it is. But I did have a request to film a video on why I switched schools, what that process was, and just kind of about where I'm at now. So I figured, what better time to do this? Also, if I look like I'm trying to think of something else or do something, I have been on 3 separate takes of this video so far. So we're just kind of gonna go with what we've got. So first off, I want to kind of share some about how everything came to be. Originally, I loved my school and the people that I worked with. The school was K through 8, and it wasn't really a traditional private school in the sense that you would think of. Essentially, this was a school that functioned on the choice program. So students were able to choose from lower income neighborhoods to go to our private school instead of going to a public school in their area. So because the parents had the option to choose to opt into our school was low income students, but not necessarily always students of color. We did have some students who paid into there, but this did vary from school to school. The district with that was a private Catholic network that functioned to house and oversee 10 different schools. From those 10 different schools, there was a leadership team that essentially oversaw that formed like a board. And so people who had been in the schools for a long amount of time would just move up and up and up toward the top, minus a couple different people who had different roles. So, like I said, I really enjoyed those people there. I liked my team teacher. She was and still is one of my favorite people and best friends. Super close with her. I also loved the other elementary staff. The school was K through 8, and middle school teachers were great, but we didn't really get to kind of coincide as much as I did see the elementary teachers, and we were all kind of in the same base. So it was something where I felt much more connection to the elementary teachers and my team teacher. Between she and I, we taught all of 3rd grade. We were specialized. At that point, I taught math, social studies, and religion. And then this year I was going to teach math, social studies, and writing. So essentially, I started looking because my best friend and my boyfriend's sister both work in public schools. And they essentially were having a discussion with me at separate points in time, just kind of talking about things as teachers do and discussing different plans, if we would open, if we wouldn't, what that would look like. Over the course of time, in talking with my boyfriend's sister, she had said to me, well, just talk and look into different things that your school has. Because I had brought up that I was a little bit uncomfortable with where my pay was and knowing what that looked like and how to deal with that with COVID, I asked her for some tips. After talking with her, she said one thing that she did that really helped her was look at her district's pay scale. And from that pay scale, she was able to say like, okay, knowing that next year or the next year, I'm going to make a little bit more money or I'm going to have X amount. It's easier to just say like, okay, this is a tough year, move forward for that specific point. And then she said to, think about like your retirement and your loans. I also have my master's, so that was why I was specifically wondering how she budgets, because I do have that master's component. So from there, she said, email your school, check it out and see. So this is where I hit some of my, what I've called pink flags instead of red flags. When I emailed about the pay scale, my principal was super supportive. She was super nice. She was like, oh my gosh, yeah, absolutely. It's so important to us, but we don't have a pay scale that exists. Then I was talking with one of my other teachers on staff at the elementary. And when I was talking with her, we were discussing retirement, different retirement accounts, and what that meant. In discussing the retirement accounts, she actually let me know that she was having to work for at least another 2 to 3 years, or that was her goal. Keep in mind that this teacher is 60-some already. And I was a little bit intrigued and, of course, don't want to pry or anything like that. But I was just kind of like, oh, I'm sure you could probably be done in a year or 2, right? And she said, no, because at that district, they only start to match and even open an available retirement account for you once you have worked there for 10 years. So it takes 10 years to be vested as a teacher or as an employee of that company to receive any sort of retirement contributions, account, etc. through the school. So that was another thing, is because she said she started one a little bit earlier on her own, it helped, but without the matching for 10 years and without the fact that there wasn't any sort of account set, the switching process was really hard. So that for me was another pink flag. Aside from all of this happening, when talking with my team teacher, I mentioned to her the struggles that I had in the spring, again, which she knew and was well aware of. I had really, really tough migraines about 45 days in a row. We weren't sure, my doctor and I were not sure if it's the screens, if it's the stress, what it was, but something about it. And I was starting to feel really nervous with how the school year was going to go. And I said, I've been looking, and just out of curiosity, when I've had jobs, I've always kind of poked around on different sites and things. And, just sometimes it's fun to kind of look and see what's going on in the area. And also, just to make sure that like, hey, is salary competitive? Is this normal? What does it look like? In researching some of that, I found out that what I was being paid wasn't normal and competitive for the area. And also that a lot of people were hiring. So my team teacher said, hey, you know what? Maybe you should apply and look, because if you're going to leave, now's the time. I was definitely a little bit shocked, but once I had her support, I kind of was like, okay, there's nothing wrong with going through a process, interviewing, finding a school, and turning it down if I end up being like, no, I know where I want to be. It was this school. Now I've really made up my mind. Aside from that, I've had an issue with how the district communicates. The district does communicate with its teachers in the same level that it generally communicates with parents, which is really difficult. And in some senses, parents know more than the actual teaching staff that was working there. For example, some of the parents actually had students in first or second grade. And we would be told we're waiting on information. All of a sudden, the parents would get a blast, which included those teachers who were also parents, who then let everybody else on the staff know that the parents actually found out that this thing was approved or this thing was happening in the parent letter. That was something that happened a couple times. We also had an issue about a month out from the school year starting, which was this past Monday, where the district actually said, hey, let's hop on a call, let's talk about precautions. We're gonna have a set virtual school, so all the teachers that wanna teach from home virtually for safety are able to. We're gonna have in-person schools, and then every day on Wednesday in the in-person schools, they're gonna be like fully deep cleaned, everything's set to go. Here's all the stuff we're gonna do, temperature checks, screening, everything. So meanwhile, I'm thinking, okay, that's not the worst. I wouldn't mind going back in person. I think it's a good thing to do. And at this point I was thinking, okay, I don't want to be virtual. That's just not on my radar. I want to go back. Fast forward a couple weeks later, and there's a staff meeting. We're all in attendance, everybody's set, ready to go, and somebody from the district is at the meeting for more information about what we might do with curriculum. A lot of the teachers are really excited. We're ready to hear, because we're hoping that this is going to be an idea of like, okay, what did we do? Not only at this meeting was the first time that we heard the virtual school no longer existed, we were told that all of the summer curriculum that the teachers, including myself and others, had prepped throughout the entire district was not being used. We were also told we would have to teach virtual kids and in-person kids at the same time. So teachers who are coworkers of mine at that school, who plan to stay home with their kids and do virtual and teaching with their kids at the same time so that their kids aren't unattended, found out in that meeting that wouldn't be happening. So that right there was also a really tricky time. New curriculum, summer work was wasted, and the school process that we had just heard about was not relevant anymore, and it was literally just sprung on us. I know it's not unusual that teachers and staff don't know, but it's also really unusual that you have people who are so unwilling to communicate with teachers that work with them. If you don't know, say you don't know. But in most points, they kept us in the dark for a while until they could figure out how many of us would be happy or the least of us would have questions. Meanwhile, I hear back from one school who says, hey, We really like what you have in your application. We'd love to talk with you, and we'd love to have a screen interview. This is like a first step interview where they basically just say like, are you going to be a right fit? And essentially, do we want to like waste our time with interviews in person, over Zoom, whatever the case would normally be. I have the phone call, go through the process. She's like, okay, yeah, this sounds great. Really interested. Awesome. Let's set a regular interview. So 2 days later, I have an interview over Zoom, and she says, okay, it's just going to be 1 or 2 people. And it ended up being a 10-person panel in which I went through the position for what I believe to be 3rd grade. I was never actually told what the position might be. There were other 3rd grade teachers on the call, so that's how I assumed that this was a 3rd grade position I was applying for. So I had that first interview. It was the following Monday, and then like I said, like 2 or 3 days later, and then they said, okay, you know, we start training right away next week. We really want to get things rolling, so you'll hear back on Wednesday. Super tight turnaround, but we want to hire right before training. I thought, okay, great, no problem. I sent my thank yous and I went well on my way. Didn't hear anything Wednesday, thought no big deal, paperwork, things happen. Didn't hear anything Thursday. Texted both and called to follow up Wednesday and Thursday, heard nothing at all. Somebody said, hey, I'll forward this on to the principal. And I was like, okay, great. And then expected to maybe hear something Friday, didn't hear anything at all. Meanwhile, I have my old school kind of going and formulating plans. In the middle of this, the Milwaukee Health Department, where I teach in the city of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, said, hey, no schools can be open whatsoever. Everybody needs to be virtual. After a little while, they said private schools were able to submit a plan for approval to go back in less than 50% capacity, or a hybrid type model. Depending on the school and depending on who would enroll in virtual versus in-person learning, it could be possible. So essentially, the school that I was currently at petitioned to open, and in the meantime, we were having more and more meetings learning about what the curriculum would entail, what they thought and wanted us to do, what that might look like, all while not really knowing any of the new items. I also had to go in and set up my classroom very shortly the following Friday after I had that interview. So I had Monday to Friday to wait, and then the next Friday was when I needed to go in and set up my classroom per my current and old contract. So essentially, my team teacher knew the whole time. I figured by that Friday, maybe it wasn't meant to be. It was hard for me to be in limbo, and I thought, okay, you know, I really liked this other school, but maybe it's just I meant to work with my team teacher. I meant to kind of be here. And I just wanted to give it a chance and kind of stick in one spot. I felt like this school really sent me a message that said, hey, you know, we are not really organized. We don't really know always what's going on, you know, different things. It's just not always a great message when there's a delay like that. And even just saying, hey, we didn't pick you. So fast forward to the next week, I go and I'm doing some work. I'm nannying a couple days a week, so I'm working, and I have an off day the Thursday before I need to go set up my classroom. I get a call from this other school. Essentially, it's the assistant principal calling me to say, hey, what's up? Annabelle, we actually really enjoyed you. Let's have a second round interview. And I said, hold on, wait a second. Where have you been for the last week? Obviously, I said it nicely, but I did say, you know, I'm concerned. I thought I would hear back. What happened? Are things okay? You know, I wanted to make sure that at this point, you know, I was going to set up my classroom the next day. If I took the interview, I wanted to be serious and considerate. Otherwise, it was a waste of everybody's time. So she said, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. We, you know, paperwork and this and that, and we had training this week and things were happening. And so we just ended up realizing we needed you to come back in, all of this. So I said, okay, you know, no problem. She said, how about Monday? And I said, how about today? Because at this point, I am setting up a classroom tomorrow and I am going back and forth and I want to be 100% in, either there or here or with you. And can I do it today? She said, oh my gosh, yeah, I think so. Let me talk to everybody else. So I get an email a little short time later that says we're good to go, ready, set. If you can prepare a lesson plan and prep everything out based on a certain writing standard, and you're going to be prepping it out for second grade. So I said, okay, sounds good, no problem. So I go to prep the lesson plan. It doesn't take me too long. I pick a book of an area that I really like, go through different things. And I also picked someone who was local to the Milwaukee area that had a children's book featured about him. His name is Will Allen. And I thought it would be a really good lesson because the school that I'm currently now at, my new school, is a K through 12 charter school. It's all about 97% low income Black families and students, really serving a population of Milwaukee that really needs passionate educators to really back and assist these students in really giving them the best education possible. So I thought that would really connect with the students, hit home. A lot of them might have known him, recognized the initiative, and so I used the lesson plan. The team essentially said they were super blown away, and at this point, I would hear back the very next day on that Friday that I would be setting up my other classroom. I would hear back about this new school. So I had no choice. I went into my other classroom and started to set up. In my other classroom, there is no air conditioning, anything like that. You've seen that video of me setting it up. It has a rainbow border of pencils and like burlap at the top. That is my old classroom. I started to set it up. It was very hot. And I just figured I would do what I want because either way, whether they called or not, I wanted to make sure I had things in place because I still wasn't really sure if I would take the job if they called. I kept kind of going back and forth and thought, well, if they offer me less than a walkaway price, maybe I don't want to walk away, different things like that. I was really concerned with my team teacher and dropping away from our relationship and away from the school and what that would do to her. And of course, she was really supportive and said, you can't worry about me, no worries. We're still going to be friends. I'll be fine. But I still did think about it as a person. It made me a little bit sad. So I started to set up that room, came home, and I remember I was so hot because it was so hot in my classroom, and I rushed to take a shower because I was like, oh my gosh, this is 100% going to be the time that this principal will call, it's going to be the time. And so I had ended up sending a thank you email to the assistant principal the night before saying, thank you for the interview. I had a great interview, all that kind of stuff. Generally, if they contact me over email, I just email the thank you. So I emailed her, and she had actually responded about the time that I had gone to the shower and said, hey, our principal is going to be giving you a call for sure today. And I was like, oh my gosh. So I waited and I waited and I waited. And finally, just as I was getting my dinner ready at about 6:30 p.m., he called. He was so apologetic, very nice, wonderful principal. I really enjoy him. And essentially he just said, hey, we want to offer you a second grade ELA position. So now I am teaching second grade English language arts. So essentially reading, writing, and social studies when we're not in a virtual world. The school that I picked is now virtual. I was very concerned about that. I asked what the virtual schedule looked like, what it was, if they had really kind of thought through the process for teachers. Everything he outlined on the call right away really had like so many different thoughts, so many different moments where they had considered teachers and students. I was really impressed with that. I was really impressed with them using summer school as a way to figure things out and figure out what was great, what was tricky, all of that. And essentially, I just found that for me, I felt in my gut that as long as my team teacher said it would be okay and she would be okay, I needed to go. I hit a point where I realized that people that I enjoy and like to work with do not make up for a horrible district. Once you have in your mind that you are not valued, you don't like the district, and they don't like you or don't care about you, it's really hard to stay and work for them. Again, my individual school was great and I loved the people there, but those people I felt didn't make enough of a difference to discount how I could be feeling in the future, other things that would happen. On top of that, my team teacher and I discussed the possibility of our school going virtual if anything would happen in the first few weeks of being open. And she and I both agreed that if we went virtual at my old school, we would be live 7:30 to 4 p.m. And I couldn't do that. And I knew that I wouldn't be healthy with that choice either. So all of these things really led me to make the decision. On top of that, like I said, I had a really good connection with my current school. I loved it, and I really loved the idea of being here and being involved in my community in a different way. It's really important that there are passionate educators ready to teach any student and all student. And I also think that given this time and the climate with COVID, BLM and everything, it's so important that if you have the passion, you have that drive, and you have the want to use it in a community such as the Black community. I want all of these kids to know that their voice matters, their narrative matters, their life matters, and whatever they choose to do matters, and it matters to me. So all that being said, that is my long-winded, super detailed story of everything so far. All that to say, I'm really excited, and our first week has been so great. If you have other questions or anything you want to know, please let me know down below. Don't forget to subscribe, and also keep me in the loop with anything you are looking for to see from me in the future. I am going to be posting a part 2 and 3 of some different things shortly, and I'm also going to be doing a day in my teacher life. So stick around and subscribe. Bye.